Okay, hi everyone. We're here to welcome Alex Broadhead, who is the Vice President of Digital Banking at Commerce One Bank. And not only is she going to kind of give us some insights into how the world of professional writing is changing as a result of generative AI, she's also going to talk a little bit about the transition from being an English major with a professional writing concentration, literally from UAB, to working as a successful person in the world. So, Alex Broadhead, graduate 2015. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So, first, I wanted to start with, what made you choose to major in English? That's an interesting choice for someone who ended up working in banking.
Yeah, I know. I would love to have a profound answer to that. But the truth is, when I was choosing my major, I was just playing to my strengths. I knew that I loved writing. English was a subject that I always enjoyed, even through high school. And so when it came time to choose a major, I just wanted to do something that I felt like I could do naturally and could maybe translate to a lot of different opportunities down the road.
Yeah, that's great. Go with what your strength is and capitalize on that. So tell me, what was the most valuable part of your collegiate experience that then ended up contributing to your life or your work or both? What do you feel you would like to kind of emphasize for students who are in their education part of their life right now?
Yeah, particularly as it relates to the professional writing program at UAB, I think that I had so many professors who were incredible at providing us with like real world assignments, real world applications for the kind of work that we were having to do. And that was so helpful, not only for thinking through how to approach a project at an actual company, but also just how to like think practically through what do I want to do and what is that going to look like and what are the different areas that I could use this in life.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is just really living into that moment where you have an assignment from a professor and thinking through, taking it seriously, investigating and using all of your resources to really make it work and maybe not just getting it done, checking off the box and moving on. Could you think of like a moment maybe in your schooling where you kind of delved into a project and spent that extra moment or really spent a little bit more time developing your responses in a way that kind of gave you some ideas about how you might work later on in the future, or maybe something that ended up happening in a job later on that you were like, oh, I feel like I've had an opportunity to think through this because of my schooling?
Yeah, absolutely. In one of my classes, we had to do usability testing for a website for a local nonprofit organization in Birmingham. And that was so helpful in terms of thinking through not only how companies are thinking about their website and the kinds of problems that they're trying to solve, but also how end users are going to interact with it. And I think that today that translates so clearly to what I do in the digital banking world in terms of just thinking through how are users really going to interact with this product? How do we think through what's intuitive for them? And how do we measure that? How do we gauge that? How do we get them to use the product so that we can learn where to make improvements and all of that? The ability to think through that really came from having the opportunity to do that in like a safe environment in a classroom where we're all learning together.
Yeah, tell me, what do you think? And I haven't really thought this through. I don't think I've ever articulated this for myself. But if you had to say, what do you think is the relationship between being a good writer and being someone who is capable of thinking through those kinds of things about a user? Maybe there's something between, like a relationship between thinking of an audience and also thinking about a user. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that especially in like professional and technical writing, so much about what is good writing is really just effective communication. And so figuring out the most basic way to explain something that is intuitive, it's basically pared down to its simplest form, I think is kind of where I've found that relationship to be.
Okay, so describe your path then from education to employment. What did that look like?
So my first job out of college was I had been an intern at a magazine, a local magazine, and that kind of led to a job opportunity, which was awesome because it felt like an opportunity to use my degree in a sense, in a way that was like very obvious. I gained a ton of editing and writing experience there, and it was truly invaluable. I made a lot of great industry connections as well. But working in editorial is, it's really demanding. It's odd hours. It's lots of travel. It's really just being willing to go where the story is and kind of follow those things regardless of, the timing or what that might entail. And so after a while of doing that, I decided I wanted to try to maybe transition into something that was a little bit more predictable, a little bit more stable. And when I was basically pursuing that transition, I decided to take maybe kind of a backwards approach. And so instead of looking for opportunities to use my English degree specifically, I looked up the best places to work in Birmingham. The BBJ publishes that every year. And it's really cool because they're categorized based on company size. And so I looked that up and then found those companies on LinkedIn and just started applying for whatever jobs they had posted that I thought I might even be vaguely qualified for. Because my logic was, if I can just get a conversation, if I can just get an interview, then I think I can help them see how my writing and communication skills will translate through this role. So put a ton of feelers out there and ultimately got a job at a company called Daxco. It's a software development company in Homewood. And so there I was able to gain a lot of technical experience, which then translated into banking as a profession. So I kind of worked my way backwards. Instead of looking for something super niche, I kind of cast a really broad net and then let that kind of hone what I wanted my career focus to be.
Full disclosure, when she told me the story before, I was like, you got to tell this to these students, because it's incredible, and it's a testament to the incredible value of being able to write and communicate. And I love that as a kind of story for our students to maybe even recreate. But I love that, and I think that's such an amazing thing about being able to write and communicate. It opens some doors if you know where to look. Okay, so let's kind of transition. Let's think a little bit more about generative AI. And I know that it's super new, but this semester in particular, for our professional writing students, we are getting our feet wet thinking about how this tool is changing communication and writing in the professional world. So what kind of uses have you found for it, if any, or what do you see it doing in the future in your kind of field?
ChatGPT and other AI technology products are something that we're actually having a lot of fun playing with in the banking world right now, just because there's so many applications. So I think one of the hardest parts of technical writing, once you've really gotten into your industry and you're kind of a subject matter expert, the hardest part is simplifying that language and kind of dumbing it down to a broader audience. And so we have been using it to take really complex banking concepts and making it something that is more understandable to our client base, our shareholder base, a broader audience. And we're really able to use ChatGPT to provide a framework for what we want to communicate. And then what I do after that, to add a little bit of a human element to it, is go through and change some of the verbiage to really be on brand for us, to match who we are, how we see ourselves, how we speak about ourselves, but in a way that's so accessible regardless of, the backgrounds that you already know about banking in general or the subject matter. We're also using this in really fun ways to help automate emails. So we can submit a prompt that we want to send a follow-up email to a prospect in a very specific tone at a certain time and cover X, Y, and Z topics. And it will generate those emails for us. We can make a couple of edits, just to sound like ourselves. And that really, really creates efficiencies in our day so that we can focus on the things that really need that like human element and that critical thinking component that I don't think that can be made up for by ChatGPT and other automation.
That's such a good point, and that's really what I'm trying to understand as an instructor, and that's what I think our students are trying to understand. What is the role of the human person in a world, kind of inundated with these generative AI? And it sounds like one of the things that is important is to understand the company's sort of ethos and tone and style and the way they want to communicate. Can you talk a little bit about, don't have to get into proprietary stuff, but what is the voice of your company, and what do you find yourself really tweaking when it comes to those generic documents that AI might spit out, and then your kind of human touch to make it more relevant to your specific context?
I think that the voice that we hope to achieve is one that is a balance between sophisticated and approachable. One where we've established that we are industry subject matter experts, but no question is a dumb question, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're really editing for when we go back to those ChatGPT generated documents, is how can we bring a little levity to this, but still stay professional. And I think that you can, so one of the ways that I got practice kind of doing that way back when I was going through and just applying to all of those companies is I actually would go through their website to kind of get a feel for the language that they use, how they talk about themselves, maybe even their core values, and then figure out ways to incorporate those exact same words, verbiage, core values, anything into my resume or my cover letter.
Right.
And so I think having that practice made it so simple to transition to, like, I'm doing this for a specific company now, and we already know what we want this to look and feel like.
Right. I'm just going to ask a couple more questions about your playing around with ChatGPT or GenAI. So when you guys are working on crafting prompts, it seems like that's another element of kind of the human agency part of getting ChatGPT or a generative AI to do what you want. So what does a typical prompt that you might use, say, for an email look like? If you could even, like, I don't know, off the top of your head, if you were talking to me, I'm ChatGPT, what would you tell me to do? And what are all the different, features? Because I heard you say, give it some information, give it a tone. What does that kind of look like?
Yeah. So a real world example of this would be an email that we set up to explain a new fraud prevention software to our commercial client base. And so the prompt for that was to create a mass email that gave a very simplified breakdown of positive pay. We asked for it to write around a ninth grade reading level, and we asked for it to have a friendly but professional tone. And then we also included some keywords that we wanted, not just positive pay itself, but also fraud prevention, efficiencies, things like that would be buzzwords to our client base and hopefully help increase not only the open rate, but also the click rate. So those were the kinds of prompts that we were inputting just to make it sound more real. And I do think right now, this is a very small local bank, but I think that if we were operating on a more national level, we would probably get even more regionally specific with those prompts so that our Southern client base is getting an email with a very specific tone versus maybe like a Pacific Northwest client base.
Yeah, that is so helpful because I think, as we're learning to write these prompts, it's great to hear that you get as specific as ninth grade reading level. So you're really, getting incredibly specific so that what you get is closer to what you want. Can you think of any example of a time when you got something from AI that was totally unusable or riddled with falsehoods? And if not, that's great. If so, we would love to hear about it, because I think that's the biggest concern, is just that, I think you have to understand that this tool is an evolving one, and that it has the possibility to generate just nonsense. Any
Right.
examples of that in your experience?
Well, even that email about positive pay and that fraud prevention software did have to be factually edited as well, because it did make some claims about how the product works that is simply untrue, regardless of what organization you're at. It's just not how it works. And so we did have to comb through it for that, and that did require other team members who are experts in the very technical part of it as well. And so I think what it did really well was provide a framework for the technical folks to meet in the middle with the people who might be considered human translators for just the regular everyday person, and come together and create a document that is factually true and also understandable.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. So it's like there's still a reason for humans to exist, which is, it sounds like you're telling us that we should still be around. That's good to know. So it's like we need to, infuse the writing from GenAI with a human tone specific to a particular audience. We also need to be fact checking what comes out of that, which is what I'm hearing you say.
100%. Even if sometimes we can get it to include embedded links for us if we want it to point back to other, maybe like FDIC articles or other sources that are not bank specific, but completely third party. And I did find that we also needed to check some of those links, because sometimes the URL would look like it's going to direct you to an article on this subject, and then when you click it, it's completely unrelated. And so even some of those things did still need to be refined a little bit, but I think that even just the fact that it provides the framework allows you to work a little bit more efficiently on those things, regardless of the fact that you are still very much going to be needed as a person.
Yeah, this is, again, so good to hear that you are needed. The other thing I'll say is, can you think of an instance when you've said, I cannot use GenAI for this particular piece of writing? Is there some kind of document or some kind of instance where you say, this needs to be me kind of fully present as a human person writing this? What kinds of documents or things might be really necessary to sort of avoid using AI?
I would say for all of our packages that are really, really specific to us. So we do quarterly shareholder updates, and we do bi-monthly board meetings. And we would probably not employ AI for either of those packets, just because it is highly specific information, very proprietary, and that's the kind of thing that we would want to have full creative control over. And then the other things, these are so much more simple, but the other things are, we do keep track of client birthdays and anniversaries, and even on the sadder side, even funeral announcements and things like that. And those are the kinds of things where we would always have an individual draft that note and handle that in person. And so there are definitely still instances where you need to be able to communicate effectively and in a tone that's appropriate for the occasion, and you're probably going to want it to be personal enough that you're not really going to want to use any other tool for that.
Yeah, because you can tell if a robot is wishing you happy birthday, or at least I hope you can tell.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. This is incredibly helpful. I think that it's going to be incredibly valuable as we continue to figure out what we're doing with this tool, but also to help encourage UAB professional writing students in particular that there is a lot of opportunity for working that you might not imagine has anything to do with professional writing, including being a banker. It's incredible. Who knew? Um, so thank you so much for talking to us, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, I'm going to see if I can stop this recording.